What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at 10 buffs and 10 nerfs which you want to see with the balance changes which will supposedly come in next week. As you can see on the screen, Adrian on Twitter did say that some balance changes are supposed to be happening next week, which is exciting. If you guys don't know who Adrian is, he works for Supercell. He's in charge of balance changes, so this is a very reliable source. So yeah, I'm going to be giving some opinions on my wish list on what brawlers I think should be getting a buff because they've just been unloved for a long time, and then of course some brawlers that are very overtuned and definitely need a nerf. So firstly, let's take a look at the buffs. So there's quite a few brawlers here that are just completely forgotten, and another one is definitely going to be a Doug. So Doug is in desperate need of a rework or just any type of love. So whether that be a healing trait just like Berry, whether that be a range buff, whether that just be something to his kit that allows him just to compete and at least get closer to the opponents. Yeah, he just sucks. He just needs some type of buff. So next up we have Hank. So he's a brawler we've got to be really careful of because the dev team clearly don't want Hank to be one of the best brawlers in the game because the Hank Apocalypse was really toxic. But at the same time, he's always been in around the D/F tier, and he's definitely at the F tier at the moment. He needs some love. So I think the perfect change would just simply add a tank trait to him, because if you tweak any of the other numbers, it might just be way overtuned. But my main problem with Hank is when he has a really unwinnable matchup, you can't even get close enough to build up your super. So then you can't even defend yourself when people get close to you. It's just unwinnable a lot of the time. So he needs a tank trait so he's able to, at least when he dies, get his super, so then in the next life he can defend himself. So with Maisie, again, another brawler that's been a little bit unloved. She was super toxic in the hypercharge meta where she could just charge her super infinitely. So I think you can't buff her supercharge rate anymore. You just can't, because it'd be way too toxic. We need to look at a different way of buffing her. So whether that be with her main attack damage, whether that's giving her love with her unused gadget and star power, or whether that's just increasing the projectile speed or the main attack range. Just something to give Maisie a little bit more. So next up with a buff, we have Chuck. So I'm starting to see Chuck even becoming worse in the heist meta right now. With all the hypercharges coming out, eventually he's going to fall out the heist meta as well. He just plain and simple sucks outside of heist. So he needs some little bit of love. I don't know how they're going to really do this because again, he's only good in heist. I think maybe they could buff the post damage. Right now it only does 800 damage. Maybe they could buff this to like 1400. Just something so in a 1v1 he has a little bit more defensive capabilities, because the post already has a knockback, but maybe a little bit of extra damage can help him at least win that 1v1. Next up on my buff wish list we have Fang. So I'm aware I'm probably a hypocrite for saying this because I don't want to see a hypercharge Fang meta ever again. It was so toxic, but he does deserve a buff. Let's just face it, so many other assassins outclass him. I don't see him at all in competitive or ranked right now, not even as a late pick, so he deserves some type of buff. I actually think right now that the hypercharge rate does need a bit of a buff, just a tiny bit, just so it's not too toxic, but at least you can get the chance of getting it, because most of the time with Fang, you're never getting a hypercharge unless you're against the worst players ever. So with Pam, we discussed this last time, but she definitely needs a little bit of love. So whether that's you buff her healing capabilities a bit more, because you think about it, the healers in the meta right now, they're just way better than her. They're like Byron, Poco, Berry. They can just do healing more consistently. So whether you buff her actual healing turret just a little bit, the radius of it, so you're able just to get more value out of it, or simply just buff her damage, because her damage is just terrible at the minute. Her main projectile attack is just really inconsistent, so she needs a love in some form. With Amico, I'm hoping he receives a small buff, because I think he's actually been pretty overrated for a while now. I think he's a good late pick. You've always got to consider that, because, you know, say for example if you're Barley or Rico, you're going to get eaten alive by Miko. That's about it. That's the only purpose he serves in the meta, because of those two brawlers are so high up. But you'd just rather go a different assassin, so he needs some type of love, whether that's with his attack damage, whether it's a slight reload buff, whether it's a rework to his hypercharge. I don't know whether he's going to come in these set of balance changes, but he definitely needs a small tweak. The next with Bonnie, I actually proposed something different than last time. So since the release of Mo, I've realized that Bonnie is just actually unfair in comparison to Mo, because with Mo you get your super back once you use your drill, which is just crazy. So you can just charge in and then go back into your normal form straight away. You have your super available, but with Bonnie you don't have that, which is insane. So whether they need to actually change it, so for example when you jump in, the more you attack someone, the more damage you do, the quicker you go back into cannon form, or they need to make it where you just get your super back instantly. I don't think that'll be too toxic with Bonnie, right? Because still in cannon form, there's a lot of clear weaknesses in terms of DPS. there just needs to be some type of change because Mo has power crept her so insane. So next up, hopefully we have Penny. So she received a small buff last update, but it didn't really change anything. She's still a D tier brawler, so she needs maybe one of 3 changes. Maybe they just need to tweak her damage a little bit, like I'm talking 2%, 3% buff, because if they overbuff the damage, she's going to be too versatile. They could increase her range, because when you think about it, even when Penny was meta, there were still some simple counters to her because she simply just didn't have the range, or they could buff the projectile speed, or just something. I don't know what they could do because Penny can easily become too toxic. So the final buff I want to see is with Ruffs. So again, it's something a little bit different. I've been seeing this talk a lot from my comment section, Reddit, etc. And I think it's a very good proposal. So with Ruffs, I think a big problem with him is that his super doesn't get as much value. Ever since they changed the way the power scaling worked, if you guys didn't know, it must have been like nearly a year ago now. But some brawlers like star powers and stuff didn't get adjusted. And Ruffs super didn't get adjusted because now with the health that it provides with the super, it's just 700 flat. So it doesn't even matter if you're power 1 Ruffs or power 11 Ruffs, it's only 700 HP you get an increase. But this should definitely scale up depending on what power level your Ruffs is. So when you're at power 11, for example, it should probably give like 1200 HP, and then of course it should scale depending on what power level you are. But I think this would be a perfect change for Ruffs because his treat obviously doesn't get the value that it used to. Now let's take a look at the nerfs I want to see with the balance changes, and the first brawler is the one that I want to see the balance changes with the most. I want to see him killed. He's so annoying. No, I don't really, but anyways, with Mo, he needs at least 3 nerfs in my opinion. He's way too strong. The ladder pushes are so toxic against him. He needs multiple nerfs. So the first nerf absolutely has to be to his main attack projectile. It's just way too strong. I know 1200 damage doesn't seem like a lot, but because of the way he works, he's like Spike, but way better. And sometimes he deals like 6k damage, sometimes he deals like 5k, 4k, which is still just absolutely insane. He shouldn't be dealing that damage, so nerf the damage immediately, even if it's like 6%, 7%, etc. The next one I would like to see is either a unload speed nerf or a projectile speed nerf. Again, I think that he can just output damage too quickly. He could just spray his shots out too quickly, so one of these two would be pretty nice with him. And then the last one I think personally has to be with his knockback. Again, I think with Mo, with his knockback, it's too powerful. I feel a lot of the time you can't even get a shot out or even press your gadget in time by the time he's just melted through you. So I think something around his knockback being like a smaller knockback would be much better. So next we have Chester. There's just no denying that Chester is one of the best brawlers right now, and it's obviously because he's so good at countering tanks, and you can't really push into a Chester. There's just so many good things about him. So of course he needs one of 2 nerfs in my opinion. I actually feel like his health is probably overtuned a little bit. 7,400 HP. People don't talk about that enough with Chester. But of course, the main problem has to be his damage first. They have to nerf his main attack damage. So whether that's just around like 5%, because again, we don't want Chester being like a D tier brawler like he's always been in the past. But him being an S tier is definitely a problem, especially for the competitive meta. So he needs tweaking. Next, hopefully on the chopping block, we have Daryl. So I don't really know how to nerf him without making him really bad again. And I like Daryl, so personally, I don't want to see too many nerfs with him. But I'm actually looking to you guys to see like what you would actually propose with Daryl, because let's face it, his kit overall is very mediocre. Like his star powers, his gadgets are terrible. So how would you actually go about it without killing him? Again, the biggest problem is just literally his rework. You get 2 rolls now, which is so insane. So maybe nerfing his supercharge rate somehow. Maybe nerfing how long it takes him to get his first super. Maybe make it so his knockbacks aren't as toxic. I don't even know, but he needs a nerf. Next brawler I want to see a big nerf with is Gale. He needs 2 nerfs, absolutely. And the first one is just a non-negotiable. He needs to be nerfed by his super damage. It's way too much. I don't even know why they buffed it in the first place, because his hypercharge was already way too strong. And that leads me on to my next point, is that his hypercharge rate absolutely needs to be nerfed. Especially after playing the last week, I've just realized just how easy it is to get team wipes because of how big the hypercharge super is. It's unmissable. You can literally charge it onto 3 people and just keep getting back to back to back hypercharges, and you eventually just kill the whole lobby. It happens every single time, and his hypercharge rate needs to be nerfed. So right now it takes about 3 supers, 3.3 supers. It should at least take 4 supers. I mean, in the future, I'm hoping they just nerf his hypercharge, like mechanically. But for now, a hypercharge rate nerf is sufficient. Surge, I think this is plain and simple. I think they just overtuned his HP just a little bit. Surge should be pretty squishy. That's just always how he's been. because you should be able to counter him. He's a brawler that's of course squishy, but then he deals big damage himself. So I'd like to see just a small HP nerf. Next up we have Byron. So he still proves to be one of the best brawlers in the game. So I think he needs one of two nerfs. I think we don't want to like over nerf him, because then he could be terrible again for a long time like he was previously. I think we should just slightly nerf his reload speed or slightly nerf his damage. Something like that would be able to tone him down. So next up on the nerf list we have Mortis, and he absolutely needs a nerf to his hypercharge. His hypercharge is extremely brain dead. Mortis used to take skill. Now he takes 0 skill because people just spam the hypercharge and you get team wipes. So the first nerf absolutely has to be to his hypercharge rate. I would even argue this needs to go to maybe 4 supers to get your hypercharge. Like, seriously, this hypercharge fundamentally is insane, but at least a 3 supers to get the hypercharge. Right now it's 2. That's just how silly it is right now. And then I actually think the mythic gear needs a nerf as well, because the reason why the hypercharge is so good is because of the mythic gear. You can just snipe people so quickly. So even just a small tweak from 50% to 40% would bring Mortis back in line. So next up we have Larry. So the twins are still pretty strong in the meta, especially in the competitive meta. I don't see them really getting a nerf, but they definitely need a small nerf. They're slowly creeping back up in the rankings. I think they just need a small adjustment, whether that be with the damage, whether it be with the HP, just by like 3% or something, just to tweak them down a little bit. Next up, hopefully on the nerf list, we have Angelo. So this is just a personal one for me, because I find Angelo still really toxic. He's not like absolutely one of the best brawlers in the game, right? But still, on so many maps and so many situations, he's just so annoying. He's so hard to kill. And I think the main reason why he's so good is because he's just able to hold his main attack for so long and it not burst like Hank's bubble. But that's another problem. We can't do this in this update. So I think he should just be nerfed in his HP or something, just so if you get close enough to him, you know, he should be squishy. He's a sniper, but he has a lot of HP. Moving into the final brawler, I'm hoping we see a nerf with it. It has to be Meg. So in ranked, I'm not seeing too much of Meg, but I still think Meg's a big problem in ladder because of the amount of damage she does. But again, you nerf the damage, then she just becomes unfun again. So I think they definitely need to at least nerf 1 or 2 things. So either her supercharge rate, because right now Meg always has super available, so even if you get close to Meg, she's just going to destroy you because her main attack and her super damage is too much. And then even if you manage to, of course, you know, get hit by all of that, and then you get the star power, knockback, and 2,400 damage on top of that. So nerf the supercharge rate, nerf the damage of the star power a little bit, and then Meg will actually be counterable now. So that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know down in the comment section below whether I missed out on anything. Again, this is a mid-season balance change, so I wouldn't really expect any reworks or any big changes. That's not really what typically happens. So I just try to keep things as basic as possible. But yeah, that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.